presenter is Mr. Steve Maximay, who's an EU-recognized senior expert on climate change and agriculture. Not only EU, by the way, somebody earlier reminded us that the EU has been supporting agriculture in the region. He's doing a lot of support to agriculture in the region. I think we need to recognize that and thank the EU for their support. As I say, Steve Maximay is an EU-recognized expert on on climate change and agriculture. Not only EU-recognized, Steve, but certainly Caribbean-recognized. He's a former PAHO consultant on food and nutrition surveillance and has been a long-standing advocate of One Health and nutrition security. He's worked in 15 CARICOM countries, and his talk this morning is on climate change implications for food security. Now, we know that climate change is a big problem. It's here with us. From what we've seen in Egypt last week or the week before, it's not going to go away. It's going to get worse. The big countries are reluctant to do anything about it, apart from promise to throw money at it, which may or may not materialize. So, Steve, please give us your presentation.
Sure, I'm starting my timer, Bruce, so that should give you some comfort. It's set at 10 minutes. Okay, so I've been asked to speak about climate change implications for food security, but at the onset, I want to say that I disagree with my own topic, because what we already ought to be discussing is the climate crisis impacts on nutrition security. We are way past climate change. As you heard previously, we are into the climate crisis. We're way past implying, because we are actually seeing and measuring the impacts, and we are way past food security. In terms of food security and nutrition security, I want to alert decision makers to the not so subtle differences between the two. There's this regional obsession with a benchmark 2100 calorie diet that goes against my fiber, goes against my core. My bias has been entrenched from my days 4 decades ago, where I was a PAHO consultant in food and nutrition surveillance, and I've seen the changes in terms of nomenclature and otherwise, even within Trinidad and Tobago, in terms of school feeding, as opposed to the school nutrition program. The climate crisis affects every aspect of food value chains, and Vassal started talking about the value chains. But unfortunately, our food value chains often begin outside of the Caribbean, and the issues include procurement, transportation, and distribution. And our local production has quantity and quality parameters associated with it as well. So a major determinant of food availability within CARICOM is foreign exchange. And we have seen what these extreme climate events, and sometimes not so extreme climate events like a stationary system, can have on GDP. So these food exporting countries have all been challenged by climate impacts, either directly in terms of droughts, flooding, and other hydrometeorological impacts, but also indirectly. Someone mentioned earlier the 2008 food crisis. Part of that involved diversion of some of the traditional staples towards biofuels, etc. In terms of transportation and distribution, energy prices have impacted international transportation, with renewable energy only being important for overland trips. We saw more than a decade ago, the major supermarkets in the UK, the Tesco's of this world, changing their distribution and transportation patterns from lorries to trains, where they were looking to reduce the carbon footprint of the food. Even within locally produced distribution networks and value chains, we have problems, and Vassal started mentioning some of them, in terms of distribution networks within the importing country. And these are challenged by climate change impacts, the disruption of your infrastructure, by sea level rise, again, hydrometeorological events. Our seaports and airports, and especially the warehousing associated with it, a lot of it is below sea level. So typically with inundation, we either get flooding, or in the steeper territories, the impact of landslides. So what are some of these local production quantity determinants? We have seen that local crop, livestock, and fisheries outputs have measurably negatively been impacted through a range of hydrometeorological events, including things of rich to reef significance. When we think of rich to reef concerns, farmers on hillsides face a range of climate-induced issues, but they, in sequence, influence what happens lower at the lower limits, and eventually what happens in your reefs, what happens in your fish spawning grounds, etc. So that our local production has been impacted in a quantitative way by the climate events. What about the quality determinants? A lot of the adaptation options that involve soilless culture raise nutritional concerns, including the relationship between soil microbiome and gut microbiome. And I'm saying, I'm hitting you these teasers so that when we get to the actual part of this discussion, we will have a frame for that discussion. The improper use of compost and manures. I mean, there have been increases in H. pylori in infections. There have been cases, well-documented cases of increased leptospirosis because of the improper use and preparation of compost. And then there are the syndemic implications of your NCDs, your non-communicable diseases, and the NDCs, which is the nationally determined contributions. And you would probably marvel at the links between those two, in that in our attempts to produce ever increasing, ever more ambitious NDCs, or nationally determined contributions, we have tried to cut and shave from areas that may have compromised our attempts to improve nutrition security, as opposed to a 2100 calorie based food security. So there's high-end recognition of food miles in the tourism sector. So there's good news. Some of the adaptive and mitigative uses of comprehensive, notice, I repeat, comprehensive climate smart agriculture have borne fruit. And when we get into the discussion, hopefully we'll be able to talk about some of those. And there are some climate justice related, and this would be of extreme importance to Pat, climate justice related impact in terms of debt climate action swaps, your blue bonds, and a whole range of a suite of financial and other instruments that have been linked to climate justice concerns that we've been promoting, more aggressively in the last 5 years, I would think. And then Richard, Vastel, everybody mentioned the 25 by 2025 initiative, but my word of caution there is this, and this is my parting shot with more than 3 minutes to spare. If nutrition security is based on foreign exchange availability and a robust complementary contribution from a comprehensive, I repeat, a comprehensive climate smart agriculture, then initiatives like 20 by 2025 must focus on a reduction, listen to me carefully, on a reduction of the food import bill based on nutrient loading and not on price. Let me repeat that. That is my parting shot. If nutrition security is based on foreign exchange availability and a robust complementary contribution from comprehensive climate smart agriculture, then initiatives like 20 by 2025 must focus on a reduction of the food import bill based on nutrient loading and not on price, because we are well aware of the number of empty calories that make their way onto those food import bill computations. I thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. And you remain my good friend because you kept within your 10 minutes and you didn't give me any horrors at all. So our friendship is even stronger after that. I mean, we've known each other for I don't know how many years, but our friendship is getting stronger all the time.
Thank you, my friend.
I see you have your hand up.
Yes, Bruce. Thanks. Just to respond to Steve had made some remarks at the end of his presentation, stressing the need for emphasis on nutrient loading as against price. And I agree with him, the focus has to be on nutrient, not just on cost. But the discussion is moving more and more towards affordable, healthy diet. So I'm thinking, Steve, maybe you might want to jump in here. How are we going to really disentangle the issue of cost and price from nutrient, if the focus is on affordable, healthy diet?
Okay. Well, as I mentioned,
may I, Bruce?
Yes, of course.
Just quickly, I would think that, Richard, we'd have to be looking at the true cost of on a nutrient by nutrient basis. If you really want to go down that road, in that, what are the implications of a 2-cent differential in price and a 30-cent hospitalization bill? I mean, I don't want to be melodramatic, but I think we are at that stage now where we are able to discern high nutrient density as opposed to empty calories. I mean, so that, let me put it bluntly, I would not be interested in a reduction of a food import bill that includes carbonated beverages and soft drinks. If you understand where I'm going, Richard, right? So I would think that one would have to look at the nutrient dense imports, especially those that aren't highly processed, and see if we can make an impact there, because that would have a direct positive impact on nutrition security, which is where my head is focused.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that helps, Richard.